You're not failing. That's the first thing you need to understand, even if it feels uncomfortable to hear. Most people walking around right now believe they're behind. They believe they made the wrong choices. They believe everyone else figured something out that they somehow missed. They look at their life and quietly assume the problem must be them. But that's not what's happening. You're not failing. You're playing a game that was designed so you never fully win, only survive just enough to keep playing. And the reason this feels personal, the reason it feels like something is wrong with you, is because the system works best when you blame yourself. The system doesn't need to crush you. It doesn't need to block you. It doesn't need to openly stop you from succeeding. It just needs you to believe that trying harder is the answer. Because effort without leverage is the most efficient form of control ever created. You wake up early, you stay disciplined, you follow the rules, you grind, you optimize, you consume motivation, and every time it doesn't work, the conclusion is always the same. I need to do more. That belief alone keeps millions of people in constant motion without ever reaching escape velocity. This is where the trap actually begins, not with laziness, not with ignorance, but with responsibility. The system rewards people who take responsibility for failure as long as they never question the structure they're operating inside. When failure feels personal, the system stays invisible. You don't ask whether the rules make sense. You ask whether you're good enough. That single shift keeps people compliant for decades. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. The system isn't built for lazy people, it's built for capable people. People who follow instructions, people who show up consistently, people who take pride in discipline, people who believe effort should eventually pay off. Because capable people don't rebel, they self-correct, they don't say this game is broken, they say I must not be doing it right yet. And once you internalize the failure, you stop looking outward, you double down, you invest more time, you sacrifice more, you stay longer, all without realizing the game was never designed to reward effort equally. If the system were obviously unfair, people would quit. So instead, it stays almost rewarding. Just enough progress to feel hopeful. Just enough wins to feel competent. Just enough validation to keep going. Small raises, small milestones, small signs of progress. Not enough to exit, but enough to stay. This isn't accidental, it's calibration. Here's the loop most people never see. You apply effort, you get limited returns, you normalize the struggle, you raise your tolerance for discomfort. At first, struggle feels temporary, then it feels expected, then it feels normal. Eventually, pain becomes your identity. You start saying things like, that's just how life is. Everyone struggles. It takes time. Nothing good comes easy. Those phrases sound mature, they sound grounded, they sound wise, but they quietly remove urgency. Because if struggle is normal, escape feels unrealistic. And if escape feels unrealistic, compliance feels logical. This is why so many smart people stay stuck, not because they're weak, not because they're afraid, not because they lack ambition, but because they're loyal. Loyal to systems that reward effort instead of ownership. Loyal to paths that trade time for income. Loyal to identities built around being dependable instead of being free. They keep investing years into things that don't compound. They keep upgrading skills inside systems that don't scale. They keep believing that if they just become valuable enough, someone will eventually let them out. But permission never comes. And when someone actually escapes, it looks like luck. It looks like timing. It looks like privilege. It looks like an exception. Because the system never shows you the leverage layer, it hides it behind complexity, behind jargon, behind gatekeeping, behind silence. Not because leverage is rare, but because once people understand it, effort-based systems collapse. Here's the moment everything changes, the moment you stop asking how do I try harder, and start asking where does effort turn into leverage. That single question rewires everything, because leverage breaks the loop. Leverage means one action creating repeated outcomes. Leverage means one asset producing value without constant input. Leverage means systems that scale independently of your time. Effort exhausts you, leverage multiplies you. That's the difference the system never explains. Most people are taught to respect effort. They're taught that effort builds character. That effort proves worth. That effort leads to success. But effort only works inside systems designed to reward it. Most modern systems aren't. They're designed to extract effort, not reward it. That's why working harder often feels like running faster on a treadmill. More energy, same position. This is also why burnout is everywhere. Burnout isn't a motivation problem, it's a leverage problem. Burnout happens when effort increases while control stays the same. You're doing more but owning nothing, producing more but compounding nothing, giving more but capturing nothing. Eventually, the math breaks you. The system doesn't need you exhausted, it needs you busy. Busy people don't question structure. Busy people don't redesign rules. Busy people don't build alternatives. Busy people cope, they optimize routines, they manage stress, they normalize dissatisfaction, all while assuming this is just adulthood. This is how people wake up at 45 confused, not because they didn't work hard, but because no one ever showed them a different game. They played exactly as instructed, they followed the advice, they stayed patient, they trusted the path, and one day they realized the finish line never existed. This is where most people either numb out or wake up. Some distract themselves. They chase comfort, they chase entertainment, they chase small pleasures to compensate for large constraints. Others get angry, they blame the economy, they blame society, they blame other people. But anger without understanding just burns energy. The real shift happens with clarity. Clarity starts when you understand systems don't care about effort. They care about position, they reward ownership, they reward leverage, they reward scale, they reward control. Effort is just fuel. Ownership decides who benefits. This is why two people can work equally hard and end up in completely different realities. One is paid for time, the other is paid for outcomes. One is replaceable, the other is scalable. One must keep showing up, the other builds something that shows up for them. Same effort, different structure. This is the part nobody teaches clearly, because effort-based systems depend on confusion. They depend on people believing effort and reward are directly linked. They depend on people believing that if they just do enough, someone will eventually take care of them. That belief keeps the machine running. The moment you see leverage, effort stops being sacred. Struggle stops being romantic. Being busy stops feeling impressive. You start asking different questions. What compounds over time? What produces results without constant input? What scales without permission? What can't be easily replaced? Those questions threaten effort-based systems. That's why they're never emphasized. This is where most people get stuck. They feel the truth. They sense effort alone isn't enough. They can tell something about the game is incomplete. But they don't know how to translate awareness into action. They know the rules are flawed, but they don't know where the exits are. Awareness without a map turns into frustration. That's why I built the Money Logic Playbook, not as motivation, not as hype, not as hustle culture, but as a clear logical map. It breaks down how systems actually reward behavior, where leverage actually lives, why most people stay trapped in effort loops, and how people exit quietly without burning their life down. No fantasy timelines, no fake promises, no motivational noise, just structure. The playbook isn't about becoming someone else. It's about repositioning yourself inside reality, understanding where effort stops working and leverage starts, understanding why some actions compound while others decay, understanding why ownership matters more than intensity. Most people never get this explained clearly. They're given inspiration instead of structure. They're given motivation instead of strategy. They're given slogans instead of systems. So they stay stuck cycling effort forever. The longer you stay in effort-only mode, the more the system conditions you to accept it as normal. Your expectations shrink. Your risk tolerance drops. Your imagination narrows. You stop believing escape is realistic. Not because it isn't, but because you've never seen it modeled correctly. This channel exists to show you the structure, not to hype you up, not to scare you, not to sell you dreams, but to help you see the game clearly. Because once you see the structure, panic fades. You stop blaming yourself, you stop rushing, you stop chasing every tactic, you start moving strategically. The playbook exists to shorten the distance between awareness and leverage, so you don't spend another decade trying harder inside rules that don't reward you. So you don't confuse motion with progress. So you don't mistake exhaustion for achievement. You're not failing. You never were. You were playing by rules that were never designed for effort to win. Once you understand that, everything changes, not overnight, but permanently. Because when you see the system clearly, you don't need motivation anymore. You need leverage.